I'm Liz Lembke, and I'm so ecstatic to introduce John Hinchliffe, one of the cornerstones for connection in our L&D and learning community. Our friend Trish, she told me, "Oh, you got to meet this guy. You got to go to this Friday event." And I went and I said, "Oh my goodness, he has to be our keynote speaker for Friday when we're talking about social connection and social collaboration." So excited to have you here, John.
I'm so very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. And it was funny. We had a little chat, and we were talking about here, how did he uncover his way, and I don't want to be talking about tools. It's the attitude. So with that attitude, John, I will let you take it away. I will be here looking at the feed and the questions, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Wonderful. Well, once again, thank you very much for having me. Ladies and gents, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I'm really, really pleased to be here, and I really want to bring you a whole heap of value with the time that we have together. Especially for me, when we're talking about social networking, especially in this session, we're really going to look at what have I found during these times of COVID, and also just these times of digital, whereby we're shifting away from what is traditional networking. I'm really looking at how we can do this effectively, how we can really be people-centric, people first, and really resonate with each other in terms of the best practice sharing. But to start off with, what I'd like to do is actually start off with a question for you. Now, we're talking about networking, but when you think about networking, what does that conjure up in your head? When somebody says, go to a networking event, what does that kind of feel like? What do you imagine? In the chat, if you can just, give us a few little bits there. So we've got connecting with strangers. Anything else? Awkward conversations. Yes. Elevator pitches. Handshakes and business cards. Primo, especially weird handshakes. Booze and bad canapes. Yes, usually cheap booze. Schmoozing. Meet new people but feels contrived. Awkwardness. Business cards. Scary. Professions, speed dating, creating connections, professional. Wow, you guys are going for it. Defo force, yes. It's gotten easier. We've seen the combination magic. Goodness, these are absolutely wonderful. Getting to know people with the same interests, bingo. Meeting people who have equal interests, sheer horror. Looking for the next best person in the room. Introvert's nightmare, yep, definitely. And unlocking the combinations, wonderful. So thank you ever so much for that insight. Really what I want to look at is how are we changing? How are we going away from that terror, that fear, those forced conversations? And how do we go to something that's more natural, but also mutually beneficial for everybody involved? And I really want to give you my insight, my story, really what's worked. And this is actually the only place, the only conference that I'm actually showing this. Because really, when the guys at L&D Cares came through to me, it just felt right to share this. So sharing is caring, and this is L&D Cares. So let's start with a little story. So back in 2019, I moved out to the Middle East. So I got a job out in the United Arab Emirates, and I previously come from volunteering for the board of directors for the eLearning network. And I previously used to do their events. Now, when I was doing the events, these were free events in bars, restaurants, just bringing people together so that they could have a safe environment just to share best practice, but also not feel alone. And so I moved out to the UAE, and I got in touch with instructional designers, L&D professionals, and just said, look, where are the events? And I was told there weren't any. Because if you wanted to meet people, you had to pay for it. You would have to pay a person who was arranging it about $20 minimum, which felt dirty to me. It felt horrible, and I just didn't understand it. And this was a reason that I was hearing from people why they didn't want to go to them. But nobody was creating, nobody was actually looking to provide a free service. So I thought, if it doesn't exist, why not create it? So what I did was, I was living in the desert. I was an hour and a half drive away from Dubai, but I knew that the majority of people in L&D were in Dubai. So I said, look, come meet me at this bar. It's completely free. I'll drive an hour and a half, and we'll come meet each other. We'll share stories, we'll share knowledge. So this was our first meetup. 5 people came. 5 people took a chance, because a lot of people sent me through messages asking, how free is this event? Am I going to be charged? Is this a subscription service? Are you going to use my data? These were the underlying queries that people had. There was a genuine fear. But for me, it was about bringing people together, just so that people can understand that there's others in their situation. This group of people then started telling other people, and photos of this actually started coming out. So we started to progress. And I was persistent. We would have meetups in cafes. We would have them in bars. The numbers grew and grew to where we were around 40 people getting together in those times when we could do face-to-face and just sharing stories. People were getting jobs from that natural synergy of understanding, who you are as a person, what you do, what you have to offer, but also getting to meet people on a human level without the contrived business cards and firm handshakes. Because really for me, it was about setting the groundwork of this is a friendly environment. This is not here to sell. This is to be human beings and get to know one another. Now, this was great. People were meeting each other. But then we had a big problem. We had COVID. COVID suddenly brought everything to a halt whereby we couldn't do face-to-face meetups. All bars, restaurants, and meetup places stopped. So we had to pivot. And with that pivot, the biggest thing on the block that was being announced was Zoom. So I shifted to Zoom, put it out on LinkedIn, and said, look, whoever would like to be involved, because no longer, because we were virtual, meant that we just had to do the United Arab Emirates. This was open globally. So this then meant that anybody from anywhere in any time zone could come together and meet like-minded people. And it's really about setting your stall out in the beginning, letting people know what it is that you're in this for. What are you looking to do? How can you help? But one of the biggest things, and this is a theme that I really want you to think about throughout everything that you do, what's the solution that you're providing to a problem? The problem here was that people weren't able to really meet others or really a bit worried about forced networking, but still wanted to meet people. And so this was a solution. It started out with 33 people taking that chance, meeting each other. These were all over the world. These were in Toronto, they were in Sweden, they were in the UK, they were in India, Dubai. Starting to break those out into different time zones so that people in different areas didn't have to stay up until 2 in the morning, which some were, in order to actually be able to have a conversation with somebody about the L&D problem they were having. But also within this provided the ability to actually have those conversations and be human. When we think about this as well, this naturally provided an environment for people to give advice, give help. And here's another thing that we think about during these times, especially on LinkedIn. When you have a connection and a connection request comes through and that person automatically DMs you with a sale, it doesn't really work because there isn't trust. Giving builds trust. Giving means that you're providing value to that relationship. And that's one of the biggest things of this community is that each person is building, each person is giving the ability to build trust, give value. With this community, it's actually been able to call itself its own name. It's a community by the community for the community. It had a poll in order to understand what they want to be called. In the end, it was called the Global Learning Development Meetup. The logo, I didn't want to be the one controlling it. It's about giving trust, giving value to people. And so they picked their logo. So it goes from being it's a product, it's a community, to being it's a real experience. It's a tribe. It is a cohesive unit that comes together because it has that one mutual passion of helping each other. Now, when we think about giving and we think about the different ways in which we can do it, this is really how social networking takes place now, to be the most effective that it can actually be. But how can we do that? So for me, giving is the new currency of credibility. And Denzel Washington in Training Day probably said it best. It's not what you know, it's what you can prove. And when we think about the competition that we face within the industry, whether this is you are looking for a new job or you are selling a product, it's not what you internally know, it's what you can really show to people. And one of the best ways of doing this is to actually provide value, demonstrating what you know, but also bringing value to people in whatever way you can. So giving builds credibility through showing you know your stuff and also trust for future requests. Gary Vaynerchuk, the incredible entrepreneur and serial giver, wrote a book called Jab, 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 Right Hook. When we think about this principle, it really makes sense. It's you giving value, giving value, giving value, and then asking, not forcing, but asking. So whether that is that you have a job that you're needing to get, or you're potentially selling, you are far more likely to buy from somebody who has provided you with a whole heap of value rather than somebody who's just slid in your DMs and asked you to buy something. It's trust. But also when we think about how do you provide that, it can be tricky. So previously, I actually created an initiative to do this. I created an initiative called #OneTipWednesday, and this was born from the Ice Bucket Challenge randomly. The Ice Bucket Challenge was quite popular because it was novel, but also at the same time, it really put an onus on people to do something. They were being watched, they were being called out in a nice way. And really with this was about how do we get those tips from people in order to actually give them something novel, to put onus on them. So with One Tip Wednesday, this for me focused on, you did a video whereby you gave one tip and you nominated 2 people. Then they would do a video of a tip and nominate 2 people. Now, in the beginning, I thought maybe this is going to get 200, 300 views. It's a novel idea and it might help a couple of people. LinkedIn got on board, Microsoft, Credit Suisse, Novitas, some big names within our industry. Carl Kopp, the godfather of gamification, did a One Tip Wednesday. So far, this has had over 100,000 views. But most of all, it provided people with tips that previously they might not have thought of. But also during COVID, this had the ability to bring people together in something that was novel, something to look forward to. But also when we think about the way that we're going with digital, really how do they have a voice? And how do they become comfortable on camera? Because we're moving more and more towards that, whether that is how you build your courses, how you consume your digital content. Video is becoming more and more demanded by the world. And so One Tip Wednesday was really there to help people be more comfortable, but also at the same time, sharing that knowledge, really helping people demonstrate what they know. And when we think about sharing that knowledge, a really great way is to provide mentoring. Mentoring works in 2 ways. It helps you provide knowledge to people, but also reverse mentoring helps you pick up on stuff and really refine what it is that you're doing. It helps you streamline. It helps you look at the foundation with which you work from. It's good karma. But also when we think about how you share knowledge, so we think about the different mediums that we do, what are you most comfortable? So if we think about in the chat, if you wanted to provide some knowledge that you have, a tip, how would you prefer to share it? So let's say, for example, on LinkedIn, would you do a post? Would you prefer to do video, audio? Would you prefer to write an article? What is your favorite medium? So in the chat, let us know. Meme? You know what? I do actually really love a meme. Just post it. Ooh, video, post or blog. Post. What else do we have? No blogs, but people like my voice apparently. You know what? That's a good thing to have. That's a nice skill. Newsletter, written mostly. A little inside tip as well when we're thinking about sharing knowledge. On the LinkedIn app, whoever you are actually connected to, you can send them a video message. When we're talking about making things personal, this takes it to the next level. So if you have a new connection, rather than a thanks for connecting, just text, you could have a video that says, hi, I am so-and-so. Really pleased to be connected to you. I found this great article from so-and-so on this topic. I really hope that helps. wishing you a great day. As a video that is super personal, also bringing somebody value. All of a sudden it changes, it makes you memorable, but also you're bringing that people value. And this is the thing that we keep on saying, is that value, credibility equals trust. And that's something so, so crucial. And it's making it personal. Now, really when we're talking about best practice and how we do things, think about synergy. How does this all link together? How is it beneficial for them? How is it beneficial for you? Now, for me, this is part of the community. The community so far, the global learning and development community, it meets every Friday. So far, we've welcomed over 800 people in the past 8 months. These are an incredible bunch. We have a group in Toronto who physically meet when they can for coffee, for a beer, and it's just a wonderful thing. But when we think about how do you really set the rules of engagement, these are the guidelines that I post. So no selling. When we think of networking in its purest form, when we were talking about it, it's super selly, it's transactional, and that's not how we are as human beings. We're there as social beings. We really want to know people. So respect others, help each other, and most of all, have fun. That combination is us as human beings at our absolute best. And it really means that we're open to helping others. It's open to them helping us. Franklin Covey has this insight whereby we teach others how we want to be treated. So if we're open, transparent, and helpful to others, more than likely, they're going to do the same to us. Not everyone, but having that as the opening part of a relationship is incredibly important. It means that you're on the right path. But also, when we think about kind of what's in it for ourselves, depending on what your return on investment is, it can be different things. So for me, I am head of talent for a digital learning marketplace. And so a big thing for me is understanding what is happening in the industry, who is in the industry, and also where might there be a synergy for freelancers coming together with clients. So for me, LinkedIn is one of my biggest tools. Now for me, this is an insight. This is behind the scenes. This is my social selling index score. So for me, I'm in the top 1% for our industry, for L&D. In the whole of my 7,000 network, I'm in the top 6%. When we go through LinkedIn, it's very much about how are we providing value? How do I provide value? How do I provide resources that I've found, that I've spoken to people? And really think those are going to be relevant for individuals, whether that is through a post, whether that is through a video, but it's give, give, give. Now, I've been very, very blessed and very thankful that along this journey of helping, creating a community, mentoring individuals, and just generally being nice, I was nominated for the COVID Champion Award at the LPI Awards, which takes place next week. Now, in terms of that give, 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 ask, a big thing that I had to ask was for people to vote. It was a public vote. But it's because I provided so much value beforehand that people were nice enough to vote. We have to see how many votes have come in, but really it's how have you provided that value in whatever you've done. So think about what is it that you're wanting to accomplish in order to actually be able to give, 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 and what is that ask that you might need in the future. Obviously, being completely transparent about what it is that might help, why you're doing it. And it's really just being clear and consistent in your messages. Now, further to this, here's some top tips. These are things that I found from having discussions with people, from feedback from people, but just observing, because that's one of the wonderful things of creating a community is that you can observe, you can get feedback from people, you can react to how they're actually working within that. So top tips, take genuine interest in what other people are doing and who they are. Look to understand about people first, because that's going to be a great indication of how you can help each other. Not just going in with a preemptive decision of what you're going to do, what you want out of it, and only focusing on that, but how do you help others? What is going to be in it for them? What is the solution to the problem that you're going to solve? In addition to that, provide resources to other useful stuff. So not just stuff that relates to your work, but stuff that you found that's really useful. Is it that you're talking to somebody and they say, goodness, I'm a terrible graphic designer? Well, have you tried out Canva? Oh, I could really do with subtitles for my videos, but they're going to be quite expensive. Have you tried Otter.ai? What are the things that you found? Because providing value to people, saving them some money, it builds that trust, it builds that credibility, but it also builds a business friendship, which is something that whether you are looking for a job, whether you're looking for a promotion, whether you are looking to expand sales, or whether you're just looking to meet like-minded people to have a nice life, that is crucial. In addition to this, the more good conversations you have, the more good that will happen. It really is that. If you're engaged with people, if you're out there doing good, good things are going to happen. It's a cycle. It's you providing that karma to the world that you are invested in people and they'll be invested in you. But with point number 4, really we think about it, be patient. This isn't overnight. This is about really putting in the work. This is really helping people. This is having that focus. This is something on your core. And it's really, what are you doing to help others? Because helping others ultimately will help you in whatever you're doing. So really having that thought about, it's a long game. There's no mistake in that. But the journey is pretty good. Now, as a summary, really quite simple, but something that's really effective and really good to kind of keep on board. From Gary Vaynerchuk, doing the right thing is always the right thing. It sounds simple, but it really is. It's how do you provide value to people in whatever you do? How do you really encourage them? How do you be their cheerleader? How do you provide them with resources that are going to save them time, going to save them money? Because when it comes time for you to give, ask, you're going to be in a great position. Because no matter what you're doing with networking, it's really about having that trust, that credibility. If you are perpetually putting on LinkedIn valuable posts about something that you're passionate about, that you know a whole heap about, you don't know who you know knows. So the people that you don't know who they know, because they might be having a conversation with each other and saying, goodness, I really need a new learning management system. You know what? Bob posts every single Thursday his top 5 tips to finding an LMS. He seems to know his stuff. Go talk to him. You could have commission from that. You could have a YouTube channel dedicated to insights. We're living in amazing times whereby people are able to get that information and really learn from one another and really change the way in which we consume information and really build those networks. So really for me, always come back to doing the right thing is always the right thing. So that's a real whistle-top tour of what I've been doing, what I've been seeing, and also what is in my head and what is in my heart when it comes to social networking, and what I've seen has really, really worked and created an incredible community, but also been such an incredible journey for me. Now within this, we've got a little bit of time whereby we have a question and answer. So if you have any questions relating to this, any thoughts, any musings, then by all means, bob them in the Q&A and I'll be happy to answer in the time that we've got. I also have some coffee too. Yes, Dan, coffee is key.
I'm sorry, it always takes me a bit to unhide myself. So one thing I really loved about your rules are how simple, and that it really does start out with the no selling. And particularly as during this time of COVID, it's really that, like you said, don't just slide into my DMs and try and sell me something around the transactional aspect, but really, how are you adding value? How have you, so what communities are you involved in where someone did something similar for you?
I think the biggest things has been, so a long time ago when
Mhm.
I was face-to-face training, somebody invited me to a event for Absolute Vodka, which is
Okay.
a random one. And it was the most random event. It
Mhm.
had moving mirrors, it had drumming on paint tins, it had ballroom dancing, it had giant ping pong. But for me, it was really, it created that environment where you had something to talk to people about. It was
Mhm.
such a relaxed environment. And for me, I obviously don't have that budget, but I wanted to create that information, that zone whereby people could have that relaxed environment and something unique to
Mhm.
talk to each other. So within the Global Learning Development Community Meetups, within those, we have 2 rounds of breakouts, but then we have a fun quiz.
Mhm.
Now, when you think of networking, at what point does a quiz come in?
Unless you're at an Irish pub.
Well, maybe. But with this, it really has come down to, people being able to have an environment whereby they can have fun. They know they're going to be in for a good time. They can learn about what animal is the Canary Islands named after. And it's just these weird, creative ways of just bringing people together.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's a really, it's been interesting. That was one of the most beautiful times for me to really think differently about how
Mhm.
do we have those interactions with one another.
Yeah, yeah, Batman, free it up. I love it. So 2 questions came in terms of, the first one was, what's your view on the confidence factor? If I'm a generalist, how do I know I've got something useful to give?
Well, you're an expert in yourself, okay?
Mhm.
But also thinking about, you don't have to give anything that is groundbreaking. It can be
Mhm.
the stuff that you're learning about.
Yeah.
If you're learning to upskill, then a great thing is recording that journey.
Mhm.
Letting people know, what is it that you learned? What have you produced? Here's my portfolio that I created this week. What's people's feedback on it? It's starting to show that you're into it, what you're developing. You are showing what you can do. So if we go back to Denzel, it's not what
Mhm.
you know, it's what you can prove. So being able to actually provide that information and show your journey, and document
Mhm.
that however you like, whatever is right for you, whether it is image, text, whether it's video, whether it's audio, and really going with that and you know show what you're learning about
Mhm.
or the things that you're interested in.
Yeah.
Because it's really weird. You're going to find people that are interested in the same thing as you just haven't found them yet.
Exactly. I love it. Okay, and then another question is, what are creative ways to identify what I can offer?
It's really coming back to those really just honest conversations with people, taking a genuine interest in what they're up to. What are their pain points? What problems
Yeah.
are they seeing at the moment? I'm really just absorbing.
Mm.
There's in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. One of the habits is seek first to understand, then to be understood.
Mhm.
You need to understand people. You need to
Yeah.
understand your audience. You need to consume. Then you can understand what is the problem, because then you can offer a solution. If you try and offer a solution without knowing what the problem is, that's like a doctor opening the door, welcoming you in and prescribing you without even talking to you.
It is, yeah, absolutely. And, as we look to learning, that's one of the things where we oftentimes miss the boat, is that we don't actually get the people we're designing it for into the room and ask them, what do you really want? What do you really need? And really taking that time for the empathic discussions and understanding truly what are those pain points, or are we trying to solve a problem that's not even on the front burner for them in terms of their concerns.
Yep. And also, I would say, in terms of creative ways, one
Mhm.
area that I'm seeing a lot of people utilizing is polls.
Yes.
Polls on LinkedIn. It's surprising how many people will answer a poll because it is insanely quick and easy to utilize.
Yeah.
So posing a real question that might intrigue people, that's a wonderful thing. Start to collect that data and start to try. And like one of the points for top tips, be patient. It takes time.
Yeah, it takes time. It takes time to build it, and to explore those ideas. And to come back to one of the other tips from this week was from Hung Ling: ask 3-quarter questions. Explore different ideas by inviting people into the discussion to explore those ideas together with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it.
Yeah, it's pretty fun getting to get to know people.
Mm-hmm.
Get to know people is a fun thing, but then helping people is pretty fun too.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. Well, John, you're awesome. Thank you so much for coming and giving us our launch for today around social connection, particularly in social isolation, of saying, okay, how do we pivot? How do we take that opportunity and really connect, add value, and understand, at the end of the day, we're all human. How are we interacting and how are we supporting one another? I love it.
Wonderful. Thank you ever so much for having me, and thank you everybody for being here.
Yeah, awesome.